saying
Hi, Brian.
they're for that. Yeah.
So, Brian, we talked earlier this afternoon on a couple of things. When you read that, did you get the same feeling after you read it as I did? I can't hear you, Brian.
He's on mute.
You must be muted, Brian.
Yeah, there we go. Are you talking about the new Miller application, Percy?
I'm talking about the minutes.
Oh, the minutes. Yeah, a little bit of confusion on that. I'm not sure. It appeared that the motion was to accept it on page 31 of that application, was to accept it with the easements, and then further on that red lettering suggested the easement wasn't a part of it. So I wasn't quite certain how that whole thing went.
Okay, so I'm going to bring it up for clarification.
Okay, thank you.
I'm muted.
You are?
Oh, no, is it in this place? Mute.
Nothing that's not even.
Hi, Mr. BJ.
Understand.
Oh, hi. Welcome.
It's 4 o'clock.
BJ, are you able to mute?
I am in.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, I'm listening.
Okay. Are you able to take your video off and unmute yourself, please?
Sorry, I couldn't listen to you properly.
Sorry. Are you able to please take your video off and mute your audio at this time?
Okay, we'll do that. Just a minute.
Okay, thank you so much. And if you could just take your video off, please, just for the time being, until your application's up.
I like that name.
There you go.
Okay, thank you so very, very much. 1 second, we do have a caller that is on the line. Hi, caller, are you able to state your name for the record? Caller, are you able to state your name for the record, please?
William Kendrick.
William Kendrick, thank you so much, Mr. Kendrick. All right. We are good to start.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. I'll start with the introductions. I'll start with the members of the town. I'll be Corrine Chason, she's a secretary treasurer, assistant planner. Rita Jabor, manager of planning services. Sarah Aubin, planning assistant and recording secretary. Lori Chadwick, director of development services. And the committee is Brian Gray, the vice chair. Phil Pocock, Ray Beneteau, Dan Boudreau, and my name is Percy Dufour. I'd like to welcome everybody this evening to the Committee of Adjustments. Is there any conflict of interest this evening? None? Seeing none? So noted. Need a motion for the adoption of the public agenda. Moved by Mr. Gray, seconded by Mr. Boudreau. All in favor? It's carried. Phil, I'm gonna have a hard time seeing you with your light in the back.
Yeah, I know. I'm not sure what I can do about that.
Oh, okay. Adoption of the minutes of October 20th, 2020. Need a motion for the adoption?
I'll make the motion.
Moved by Mr. Beneteau, seconded by Mr. Boudreau. Any questions? I have one. We have discussed it a bit. It's on page 31. It's probably more for clarification for myself on that easement. Sarah explained that it's sufficient what's in the minutes. So if that is okay with everybody else, we'll leave it like that. And one other thing, G, on page 31, it should read October 20th, 2021, and it reads 2020.
Okay, I will make that revision.
With those changes, all in favor? It's carried. First on the agenda this evening of applications is A 2620, custom quality built homes. The agent is Tracy Pilon. Before we start, Corrine will speak on the applications, then I will go to the applicant, then the committee, if they have any questions, will ask her questions. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak for or oppose to the applications will have an opportunity to do so. If you're on the screen, wave your hand. If not, just holler out. We'll get our attention and we'll give you a chance to speak. Okay, Corrine?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just getting situated here. Okay, we're going to be starting with A2620. Just waiting for Sarah to go to the first slide. Excellent. Okay, so the applicant before us is for Custom Quality Built Homes. The agent is Tracy P. Abs. I believe she is joining us today. The property is at 80 Laird Avenue, which is in Essex Center, Ward 1. The OP designation for this property is residential, and the zoning is residential R21, which is for medium density housing on urban lots. You can see on the left-hand side, the property is identified in yellow. The property is currently vacant. The older home that was there has been removed. And next slide, we'll get into the proposal. So the applicant wishes to construct a semi-detached dwelling, which is 1,375 square feet in size. In order to construct the proposed design, they are requesting 3 variants for this proposal. The first one is a 10-foot reduction in the minimum lot width. The zoning provision states that the minimum lot width for a semi-detached dwelling is 60 feet. The lot is 50 feet wide by 100 feet in depth. Number 2, relief from the minimum lot area. The zoning provision states that the minimum lot area for a semi-detached is 6,350 square feet. This lot is 5,000 square feet. And number 3, the third variance, is relief from the side yard setback provision where there is no garage. Typical interior urban lots require one side yard setback to be 4 feet, while on the other side, if there is no attached garage, it must be 10 feet. If there were an attached garage, the applicants would be permitted to have 4 feet on both sides for setbacks. So as you can see, if you look at the first shot there on the left, which shows the site plan, you'll notice there that they are proposing 4 feet on either side. If there was an attached garage, they would need, if there's no attached garage, they would need 4 feet and 10 feet, okay? And then you'll see the layout there and the side views. Next slide, please. So just a couple of shots here from the property. The middle photo is the actual site. And then on either side, you'll see the corresponding neighboring properties. You'll notice that on one side, there is actually a multi-residential unit. And on the opposite side, there is a single family residential building on the opposite side. So one single family dwelling on the other side. The bottom 2 pictures just simply show a little bit of the character of the size of the width of the road there and some of the older homes that are in this neighborhood. Further in the back there, you will notice that there's a picture of the new condos that are down at the Ready Bake site. Next slide, please. So when reviewing applications for a minor variance, the committee should be satisfied that the 4 policy tests are met. Number 1, general intent of the OP and the zoning are maintained. Semi-detached dwellings are permitted in the residential R2.1 zone. The OP encourages infills in this area of Essex Center. The application satisfies the general intent of the OP and the zoning. Number 2, the proposed variance is minor and desirable for the appropriate land use. This proposal is considered minor because the layout of the structure meets the zoning provisions of a typical residential structure, such as lot coverage, front and rear yard setbacks, and maximum height provisions. The typical side yard setbacks for a dwelling with a garage is 4 feet and 10 feet. A dwelling with a garage requires a minimum of a minimum of 4 feet and 4 feet. The design structure can meet a 4-foot and 4-foot setback and also meet the fire code requirements. Higher density residential is a desirable element in the core areas of Essex Center, and the existing zone reflects this. Number 3, is it compatible with the character of the neighborhood? Subject site is located within an area of the Essex Center that contains single family dwellings as well as high density residential structures. The adjacent property contains a multi-unit residential dwelling. The proposed semi-detached has been designed to be compatible with the established character of this neighborhood, and it will have a gabled roofline and provide driveway parking. The design accounts for only 1 dwelling unit per side of the semi-detached structure. And number 4, the variance deals with circumstances particular to the site and development. This particular site is typical of this neighborhood in that it is 50 feet by 100 feet. The existing zoning permits semi-detached houses, but also prescribes that the minimum lot size and lot width needed is the 6,350 square feet and also is 60 feet wide. Although the owners cannot change the lot size, they have designed a layout that actually satisfies all of these typical interior lot setbacks and lot coverage provisions, just as a normal single dwelling would have to satisfy. Next slide, please. This application was circulated to internal Town of Essex departments. We received comments from Mr. Kevin Carter, Chief Building Official, and he stated that he had no objections to this proposal. Circulation to external public agencies was also completed. We received comments from IRCA stating that they had no objections. After giving public notice, we did receive one written correspondence from Mr. James Reno, and he is the owner of the multi-unit residential building next door, and he states the following. He states, there is no room for parking. People at present park on the sidewalk and all around the building. He owns the property on 72 Laird. Frequently, there are deep ruts, which make it difficult to cut the grass. A cement curb would deter parking on the grass or in spots that my tenants park on this property. I am asking that consideration for that a single dwelling instead of a semi-detached dwelling be built. And then he asked to be notified of the decision. So that's Mr. James Reno at 72 Laird Avenue. Further, we also did receive one other public inquiry from Linda Ammonite, who lives directly across from the property, or this property at 73 Laird. She expressed her concerns over the phone, and they are as follows. She had concerns that there will not be enough parking area for the 2 dwelling units. A typical family has 2 cars. That would mean that 4 spaces may be needed for the semi-detached lot. People park on the shoulder all along Laird Avenue. She is worried that the area in front of her street will be utilized now by these new tenants. For the committee's information and in response to these concerns regarding parking, the applicants have included driveways in their design, and they are only required to provide one parking space per unit to satisfy the zoning requirements. They are not required to provide 2 spots per unit. At this point, I will return it back over to you, Mr. Chair, for questions and comments.
Tracy? Did you hear me?
Tracy, are you available?
Yes, can you repeat the question?
It's your turn to speak on the application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I concur with the presentation from the planner and the recommendation. Just to add, yes, parking will be provided for each unit. Semi-detached is a permitted use, so what we're doing is we're trying to fit the structure on the undersized lot. Drainage and building permit will be filed with the municipality prior to any construction. That will address the location and site of the driveway and the setbacks, and happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the committee have any questions? Mr. Pocock.
Through the chair, Corrine, do you know if the town is planning on putting curbs all the way down Laird, like on Jenner? I saw that there's curbs on that side of that road. I didn't know if they were going to extend it all the way down Laird. I know there was a time that the town was doing a project to put curbs everywhere. I think if there is, this might cause some issues down the road for the bylaw officers for parking and how they're going to do curb cutting.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Pocock, I am not aware of them putting in any curbs, but it is something that I can follow up with.
I just have. You're ready.
Okay, anything else? Anybody else? Mr. Boudreau? Or you got something?
Through you, Mr. Chair. My concern is parking also. It would have been nice to see it on the site plan where the proposed driveways were going to be. And I'm not 100% sure if this street has alternate parking every month. So that would be inconvenience to the opposing neighbors on the opposite side of the street when the tenants or the owners wanted to park on the opposite side.
Through you, Mr. Chair. This portion of Laird has gravel shoulders on both sides. I am not aware of there being any bylaw or any signage. I have not seen any signage on this street, this section, that shows that there would be alternate parking. And people, residents all along Laird do park in this gravel area and on several other roads along in this neighborhood.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Boudreau?
Yes, it does. One more question through you, Mr. Chair. Isn't the municipality's concerned with on-street parking? Are they trying to move the parking onto the private property? I guess that question is addressed to Corinne.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not able to answer that question, but I can defer that either to Rita or Lori that may have some insight for you.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's Rita. So with regards to Mr. Boudreau's question, our bylaw states that each of these dwellings have to have their own separate access areas, their own separate driveways. So yes, our intention is to make sure there is on-site parking for these dwelling units. But in terms of prohibiting parking on streets, I don't have the answer to that either. Like Corinne said earlier, we can contact our Director of Infrastructure and find out for you, because it seems to be a trend, the issues with parking.
Thank you. That's my questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Benito.
No, mine was the same as Danny's. It doesn't show where there's any parking at.
Okay.
There's no parking anywhere.
All right, Mr. Benito's question's been answered as well. Anyone else? I'm looking for a motion on,
Phil's got one.
Phil, you have another question?
Yeah, this maybe from to Tracy. Tracy, where is the planned parking going to be on the this lot? Is it in front of, like, how are you? Is it both driveways put together? Or are they on either side of the lot? How are you planning on doing the driveways?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I confirm that parking will be located in the front of the building. There's 25 feet of space and the width is 50. So it is very likely that we'll be able to get more than the minimum required one parking spot per unit. We will attempt to work with the municipality to try to accommodate so that we can have maybe 2 per unit, depending on how wide they will allow us to have that driveway, and be able to have the depth as well. So again, there's no garage, so parking will only be located in the front of the building, and we'll try to accommodate more than 1 per unit.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Pocock?
Yep.
Okay.
I have.
Mr. Boudreau?
I have a no.
Again, my question, through you, Mr. Chair, again, my question is directed towards parking. Is there any possibility of pushing the building back? 25 feet would be a little tight if you park a pickup in front. You know, a pickup is about 22 feet, leaves very little room for the homeowner to walk in front of the truck through via sidewalk to the entrance. Just a suggestion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Do you want to answer that, Ms. Pilo?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. Again, we're not asking for relief from your parking. We are complying with your minimum parking requirement. It's certainly something that I can review with the applicant to see if they'd be willing to move the rear yard. We do have sufficient rear yard. We're not asking for relief. So it's certainly something we can take a look at. But again, under the Committee of Adjustments minor variance application, we're only asking relief for the interior side yard and the lot area and lot width. So we're going to comply with your minimum requirement, and we'll definitely work with the municipality to provide as much extra parking as possible.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's Rita, if I may.
Go ahead.
The 25-foot setback from the front lot line is the standard setback for single detached dwellings. It's even less for semi-detached dwellings. So in terms of having that space, it's no different than a regular dwelling in a subdivision meeting those setback requirements.
Go ahead, Mr. Boudreau.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I understand the setback's 25 feet and the parking is going to be met, but I'm envisioning 4 vehicles parked in front of this structure, and they'll be awful close to the sidewalk. So this is my suggestion to move the building back a little further. That's only a suggestion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
On Mr. Boudreau's question, Ms. Absent, is that a possibility that the applicant would move that? If it was
Through
part
you,
of the
Mr. Chair.
configuration?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's certainly a possibility, but I can't confirm that until I review with the applicant. But it would be part of their building permit. So what I could do is definitely convey that message when they apply for their building permit. If there are no appeals, we will definitely accommodate as much as we can. That's the best I could promise at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Beneteau.
I have a problem with going ahead with this when we're going to try making the parking work. You're not seeing where the parking's going to be. You know, we're not saying we can't, or we could have a pickup like Mr. Boudreau says, hanging half over the sidewalk. That's my biggest problem here.
Any comments, Tracy?
Perhaps I can ask, the applicant was going to be online, Daniel from Custom Homes. I do see him listed. Perhaps Daniel can speak at this time. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Chair and committee members. I can address some of the concerns that are felt by a number of the members. So a typical pickup truck does measure approximately 20 feet, which would satisfy a parking into a garage if one was there. So the 25 feet that we do have on the front of the property would fit a standard size pickup truck and allow for at least 5 feet of space before we would actually come onto the sidewalk.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else other than the committee wish to comment on the application? Seeing none?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I could just add one more item. It's Corrine.
Go ahead.
Just a note here that the site plan that they did provide shows that there is 39 feet for the rear property setback from the back rear lot. 39, as you guys know, that they require 25 feet for a rear yard setback. That does free up about 14 feet that they could potentially push that proposed semi-detached dwelling back. So that just gives a little bit more room. Just wanted to add that.
All right, thank you. Looking for a motion on the minor variance.
I'll make the motion.
Moved by Mr. Beneteau. Your motion is
To go with the
to
application.
grant the application. Mr. Beneteau moves to grant the application. Is there a seconder out there? Mr. Pocock. Is there any questions? Call for motion. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you. Okay, so we got 3. Second on the list this evening, application A 2721.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair. The property is located, it's a vacant lot on Robson Ave, and this is in the Jacana subdivision in Essex Center, Ward 1. This property, you'll see on the left, is shown in yellow, and then shown on the air photo in yellow, just to give you a bird's eye view. The official plan of this designation is residential, and the zoning is residential district R11 for low density housing on urban lots. This photo, the air photo on the right-hand side, it was taken earlier this year. So just so the committee does know that the roads and the services are now in at the Jacana subdivision. Next slide, please. Okay, so the applicants are proposing to construct a new single-family dwelling with an attached garage. You can see the layout here, and the arrow is pointing again to where that's located in that crescent. A couple things you'll notice here. The relief that they're asking for deals with a couple of features here that pay particular attention to. The rear yard lot line is on a skew, it's on an angle. And then the front yard gets cut into by the bell curve of the crescent of Robson Avenue. So what they're asking for relief for is the minimum required front yard. They want to reduce it down from 7.5 meters to 5.25 meters to deal with that bite out of the property from the front, the bell curve. The second one is the minimum required rear yard setback is typically 25 feet, 7.5 meters. What they're proposing on that south side of the property only, they want to bring it down to 6.4 meters, which is 21 feet. The other side of the house at the rear property line, they can meet the required setback distance. Next slide, please. So just some shots of the subdivision that's been going in. You can see that the services are now in place, and they are going to be starting with house development down here. The property is shown in the center, and you can, not much to see really. There's really no houses to compare except for around the corner, which is on the bottom photo there. You can see the ones are being proposed. This proposal is in comparison to these, so similar in size and fashion. One thing in particular that I want to mention is that this whole portions of the subdivision have special requirements for drainage. This particular property is actually going to have to install a rear yard catch basin that will be routed out to the front sewers of the road. Next slide, please. So as per the official plan, the committee should be satisfied that a minor variance can meet the 4 tests. First test is general intent that the OP and the zoning bylaw are maintained. Official plan permits single-family dwellings within this residential designation. The zoning bylaw permits the construction of single detached dwellings, and the applicants have designed a house that is comparable to neighboring lots and dwellings. Number 2, the proposed variance is minor and desirable for the appropriate land use. The proposed layout with the slightly reduced front yard will not impede sight lines for the subject property, adjacent driveways, or street parking. The proposal for a single-family unit with an attached garage is comparable again to other surrounding neighbors. Number 3, is it compatible with the character of the neighborhood? The nearby dwellings currently under construction are comparable in size, again, architecture and character. And an attached garage, in this case, they've flipped the garage in order to try and satisfy the issue with the bell curve of the crescent there, the roadway that cuts in. So they've purposely put that attached garage on that side of the lot in order to accommodate that. No further traffic patterns or changes to the traffic patterns are anticipated because of this. And number 4, the variance deals with circumstances particular to this site. Again, it's mostly dealing with the rear yard being on an angle and the front yard being due to that bell curve. Next slide, please. Comments and action. Upon circulation of this application, we did not receive any objections to this application from internal or external agencies. We did not receive any public comments as a result of the circulation. And at this point, I will turn it over to you, Mr. Chair, for questions and comments.
Percy, you're on mute.
I believe you're muted. I can't hear. Is it my turn to speak?
Yes. There we
Okay.
go.
Okay. Like I said was in the application earlier, it's the same models that we've been building previously on the street. It's just a very obscure lot, and we just want to be able to fit the same house and style as the neighborhood on this lot. But the bell curve and the angle in the rear yard does make it difficult for that, so we do need the minor variance. It's no issue with lot coverage or anything. It's just the front yard and rear yard. And also we did try to line it up with the neighbor to the left of it, so even though it is a shorter setback in the front, it should look the same from the street because it'll be in line with the houses beside it. Yeah, I have no other things to add. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the committee? Mr. Polkoff.
Through you, Mr. Chair, what is the square footage of that house?
The square footage of the house is 1,942 square feet of coverage space, house area.
A follow-up question through you, Mr. Chair. Do you have any other style houses you can build that would meet all the requirements of that lot? Or do you only have one house design that you'll flip back and forth?
We do. This is our most popular design, but the issue is that even if we do the 25 foot, we don't really have enough middle space to offer. Our usual house is around 1,485 square feet of finished space, and this would take out too much that we wouldn't be able to hit that mark, and the lot would sort of be overpriced for the house that you could put on it, if you know what I'm trying to say.
I know what you're trying to say.
Okay. Mr. Boudreau? Go ahead, Dan.
For you, Mr. Chair, and addressed to Sawyer. If you take a straight line of the chord of the two arcs, what would be the distance from the front of the house to the chord? You understand what I'm trying to tell you or ask you?
Yes, I don't know that information offhand. I could guess if that would help, but I don't know the actual.
Technically, give you another couple of feet, would it not?
Yeah, it would give me, I guess, about 2 feet. I'd be a little under 20 feet for the front yard.
Thank you. My second follow-up question, the average line of setback to the neighboring properties, I understand there is no houses currently built, so this house would be a precedent-setting house?
Yes, but their houses are applied for. Lot 23 to the right of this house has been applied for, and so have some other houses.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Mr. Gray.
Yeah, I notice in the application that it's suggested that the lots that look like the lots that are adjacent to this one, when they talk 15 to 19, 29 to 43, and they've all had a reduction in the minimum front yard depth to 6 meters, which is approximately 20 feet. So is the plan a subdivision? It was approved with a smaller setback than is required by the town? Maybe somebody from the town could answer this, Mr. Chair.
Rita, would that be you?
For you, Mr. Chair, yeah, yes, I can answer that. So there are certain lots within this subdivision through the zoning bylaw amendment process. They were granted reduced front yard depths. So it was through the zoning bylaw amendment process. It wasn't through the plan of subdivision process.
Okay.
that answer you? Go ahead, supplementary.
Supplementary. So is there any plan for sidewalks in this subdivision then? Obviously, they can't be on this side of the street, on the south side of the street.
That would be directed to Mr. Sawyer? Or,
Well, perhaps back to Rita again. I'm not sure, or Mr. Sawyer, whoever would like to answer.
yeah, Ms. Chadwick's going to take that one. Go ahead, Lori.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to the Committee of Adjustment. Great questions. I'm really enjoying hearing what everyone has to say and some of the comments. Great questions from the committee members, especially. So to you, Committee Member Gray, the sidewalks, you're correct that they're not proposed to be located within that crescent. The plan of subdivision, if you give me just a moment, I can pull that up, but it's just not something that I know is proposed for that particular lot. But I can take a quick second and look up that plan of subdivision as we speak.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. So is that kind of becoming a new standard then for subdivisions in Essex, that we don't want sidewalks in them? Are we putting people back out on the street when they want to walk and that?
Oh, absolutely not. I think in our development standards manual, our current manual speaks to certain requirements, and for example, on collector roads versus a residential street, that they may be, on both sides of the street. And if the developer does propose only one side of the street, then it would have to go through a review with infrastructure services, as well as with our, active transportation analysis to accept something called cash in lieu of those sidewalks. So in this particular development agreement, I'm just not aware of where the sidewalks are located outside of this crescent. They likely will be on Bryan and, is it O'Brien and, oh gosh, I just got to pull up, like I said, pull up that subdivision, and I can give you a little bit more details on that. And just as a side note, we are undergoing a full overhaul of our existing development standards manual so that we can actually have more concrete, more, say, stronger footing to be able to connect for purposes of existing subdivisions with new subdivisions. So, for example, developers will have a more difficult time, showcasing and proving that they don't want to build sidewalks in some areas, where we want to say as a municipality, we want to encourage connectivity between new subdivisions and existing subdivisions. So it's not something that I would support to say we want to accept cash in lieu. I would rather see those sidewalks. On the other hand, you may hear from infrastructure services that maybe maintenance wise, they may not want sidewalks as much, but there's always that back and forth. And really as a community, I think that the most valuable thing is to be able to connect by foot and by bike.
Thank you.
Does that answer your questions, Mr. Gray?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair? Okay, thanks, Mr. Chair. We have such a wonderful team. Shout out to Sarah Oppen. She's just submitted a plan for me to take a look at and to be able to speak to. Lennox was, I think, the street that it is. Lennox to Sweetman. I don't see the details here on the sidewalks. It may, I'm going to pull up the development agreement to see if there's any sidewalks.
For you, Mr. Chair, if I may, I just took a look at the development agreement.
There we go.
In the development agreement, which speaks to, the subdivision and the construction of the subdivision and, the developer's responsibility with respects to installing services and additional services like sidewalks, there is nothing mentioned about sidewalks. And now, again, this would be the responsibility of the developer. That doesn't mean it's not the intention of the town to put in sidewalks one day. But with respect to the development agreement, I don't see anything with respects to sidewalks. I don't know if Lori found anything additional.
No, the plan of subdivision doesn't indicate that, and that may be just for purposes of the lots. And just scrolling through this subdivision agreement. Oh, here we go. The owner, for purpose of construction on one side of the street. Scrolling to the drawings, schedule. think nevertheless, whether it's this side of the street or not, I think the question, the reason why we're in front of the committee, as you all know, is to review that rear yard setback only in the one corner. So it is something that, as a part of the review of the building permits, we've indicated that the lot grading is to be very closely monitored during the building permit stage. Our chief building official and I are quite in tune with this subdivision in terms of the actual building lots. So our CBO and I have reviewed the rear yard elevations and the proposed, say, lot grading sheet for this lot itself, and are in support of, or actually would have no issue with the proposed rear yard variance, but only in the kind of the left portion of the rear yard only because of its unique shape. To go back on Mr. Gray, on committee member Gray's question pertaining to the front yard, however, in reference to the sidewalk, may I get a little bit more clarity on, I guess what the intent is for posing the questions on the front yard?
I would have just an additional comment on the rear yard. I understand it's so tough to tell since it's all new construction and nothing there at the current time. But from a site visit, it certainly appeared that the elevation on these lots is going to be significantly higher than the elevation on the existing homes to the south. And is drainage going to be addressed somehow to mitigate that height disadvantage or advantage, whatever?
Go ahead, Lori, and then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
If you're finished, we're going to move back to Mr. Polka. Go ahead, Lori.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Great questions. And yes, it does appear that a portion of the Chicana subdivision does appear to be, say, at a higher elevation than the existing subdivision. That first phase has been scrutinized and reviewed, and we've incorporated some very unique provisions to allow for, real life building. And so you'll see in the first phase, not along these particular lots, but in the first phase, there are retaining walls for purposes of kind of containing that stormwater in the on those properties so that they don't impact the existing neighborhood. For this new phase that Mr. DeYoung is proposing to build within, so on lot 24, as well as the lots that abut Fairview, that next phase, we've actually worked with the developer to lower the grading of the dwellings, or the lots, lower the grading of the lots, not impacting the storm sewer. So the storm sewer stays where it's at, but instead of the lots being this much higher, we've worked with the developer to reduce the grading so that retaining walls are actually not needed on these particular lots. So the lot grading has been reduced. We've also worked with the developer to to design those rear yards with the catch basins and to have that lot grading as well with a little berm at the back against the rear yard lots. So we've been very diligent about working with the developer's engineer on these lots, including lot 24, which is what we're here to discuss.
Is that more apt to create more flooding by doing that?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair?
Isn't that more apt to create flooding by doing that?
No, in fact, thank you for the question. In fact, it will actually work to improve the drainage and so as not to impact the adjacent properties with the existing homes along, I think it's called Queen Street, that abut this lot. So the drainage will end up in the rear. So if you're looking at a cross section, a typical backyard would have straight across. So these backyards would have a slight swale, and in other words, towards the catch basin. So all of that water is going to go into the catch basin rather than onto those rear yard properties.
Until it's frozen. Okay, thank you. Mr. Gray, are you finished? Yes? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Pocock.
Through you, Mr. Chair. This is probably to Corrine or Rita. What are the other lots 25, 26, 27, 28? What are the lot sizes on there? Because I can foresee many trips to the Committee of Adjustments for these lots if we're already dealing with asking for setback reductions and whatnot.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Sarah can probably bring up the layout plan, which is just a few slides back.
I just can't read it. That's why I'm asking.
Okay. Just bringing it up myself here.
Okay.
You able to zoom in?
Yep, Corrine, it's Lori. I see that they are at a depth of about 30 meters.
30 meters, yep. And 30 meters is the shortest point. Does that answer your question, Mr. Pocock?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? Mr. Boudreau?
Through you, Mr. Chair, maybe addressed to Lori or Rita. It doesn't show on the plan of subdivision or his site plan how far the actual curb is from his property line. Can that dimension be established?
For you, Mr. Chair, Sawyer, do you happen to know?
I believe we go straight to the. Actually, you're right. I don't know for sure either. I could look into that and get the information for you, but I don't actually know.
I was just curious because it's always a couple of feet up to 10 feet.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks. Anyone else? Anyone outside the committee wishing to speak on the application? I'll ask for a motion on the application. On the minor variance. Is there a mover?
Danny.
Moved by Mr. Boudreau.
Support it.
To support it. Seconder, Mr. Benito. Questions? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Mr. Pocock is opposed. Everybody else? Okay. All right, thank you. Moved by Dan. Did you move it or second it?
I second it.
Next on our agenda this evening is Mr. Kendrick's application A 2920, minor variance application. Go ahead, Corrine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the next application is located at it's a vacant lot on the corner of Talbot Street and Fairview Avenue in Essex Center. The official plan designation for this property is residential, and the zoning for this property is residential district R3.1 for high density residential. The proposal is for a 6-story multi-residential unit, and it consists of 40 residential units, underground parking, 3 surface accessible parking spots, and landscaped grounds and a pool amenity area that will be located on the 6th floor. Our GIS technician has overlaid the site plan provided over the 2020 air photos, so you can have a clear view of the layout of this. And also note that Mr. Kendrick's architect has applied for us a black dotted line around the building envelope. And what that shows is the zoning setback distances from the front rear side yard lot lines. And you'll notice that this building footprint at ground level is confined to that, that black dotted line. It is confined and satisfies the setback distances at ground level. And you'll also notice that the property is actually not square, it's on an angle for the Fairview side and for the County Road 35 or 34 side. Okay, next slide, please. Just some photos of the vacant property currently. You'll also notice that it's surrounded by a couple different things. You got commercial, institutional, cultural, and recreational amenities, as well as medical health facilities that are just located down the street from this property. And on to the next slide for a sec. So let's get into the proposal. So the applicant is requesting 3 variances. The first variance deals with the zoning bylaw that states there's a need for a 4.5 meter separation between a parking space and a habitable unit building wall. If you look at this diagram, you'll see the blue arrow pointing to that location. So you'll see the accessible parking spot, and then you'll see the wall of the multi-unit structure. Right where that arrow is pointing to is actually the lobby entrance into the building. Okay. So for the committee's information, the zoning bylaw is a little bit generic in this. The wording is a little bit generic in that it states that a habitable wall, you have to have this distance from the habitable wall regardless of where the habitable unit is actually located. Why this variance is needed is actually because on the second story is actually where the habitable unit is located. The owner and his architect have included this design to have actually a raised curb around the accessible parking spot to act as a buffer. And then they've also added some landscaping. They're going to have some landscaping mitigation to act as a buffer because of this reduction in this setback. Next slide, please. So variance number 2, as I referred to the black dotted line in the first slide, you can see that black dotted line on this diagram as well. Again, that is your setback distances from the rear and the side yard in this case. Just for the committee's information, the side yard is located at the top of this diagram. The rear yard is located on the right-hand side, okay? So this development is proposed to have a pool amenity area up on the 6th floor, the 6th floor only. The design calls for a 6-foot cantilever enclosed walkway around the pool area. So what you're seeing in this diagram, and it might be a little bit difficult to see, but where the blue arrow is, you'll see another diagonal or a dotted line that kind of comes out from the building footprint. Yep, Sarah, you're showing it now. And then if you can snake that around to the rear yard, you'll see another dotted line. Okay, so how this overhangs is actually the second dotted line that's out just 6 feet showing there. That's correct. Okay, so in the next slide, I kind of depict this a little bit more clearly. Actually, one more, Sarah, and then I'll flip back. So the yellow area is what the setbacks are being, or the encroachment is what's being requested. So on the side yard, you'll see that there is a very small area that is being requested that encroaches past the zoning setback distance. This area at the top is only 1 foot 9 inches. At the side yard though, at the back, sorry, I should say, it's 6 feet. So that's that area. Okay, so actually if you can go back to variance 2, Sarah. So variance 2 again is that encroachment there where the arrow is showing, and then flip to the next slide. Again, variance 3 is that encroachment, 6 feet into the rear yard setback distance. Okay, if you can just go to the side views, Sarah. right there. So again, all these two last variances only concern that structure that's sitting on top, which is the pool atrium area. You can see the side view, it's cantilevered, okay? And that's what's encroaching. So not at ground level, the structure completely satisfies all the zoning requirements. At ground level for your setbacks, it is only way up on the 6th floor that this is being requested. Next slide, please. So how does this satisfy the 4 tests? The general intent of the OP and the zoning bylaw must be maintained. So this multi-unit residential building is a permitted main use in the town center designation. The OP promotes multiple dwelling units as with compact form in the downtown core areas. Increased density in the downtown promotes pedestrian movement. It's also aesthetically and functionally enhances the character of the main street. And the property is zoned R3.1, which permits this high density residential development. This proposal therefore satisfies the OP and the zoning policies. Number 2, the proposed variance is minor and desirable for the appropriate land use. Due to the angled property lines of the site, the relief would permit the most efficient use in space and lot coverage. The relief requested is considered minor because the design satisfies all other zoning provisions. The slight encroachments will not impact the adjacent properties as they are only located on that 6th floor. Number 3, is it compatible with the character of the neighborhood? The property is surrounded by a commercial corridor, institutional church facilities, and the sports and recreation complex. Future residents will benefit from this close proximity to these amenities. There is a growing need for rental units within walking distance to the downtown, and the proposed development will utilize underground parking. A landscaping plan will enhance the look of the corner and provide an amenity area for the residents and pedestrian traffic. This proposal will be subject to site plan control. So therefore, a traffic impact study, stormwater management are just components of the or examples of the studies that will be required through the site plan control process. Lastly, number 4, the variance deals with circumstances, particularly the site and development. Due to the subject property having irregular property extents, portions of this design slightly overlap the required setbacks. The applicants have designed mitigation barriers for variance 1, which deals with parking blocks and curbing, and will satisfy the safety mitigation needed for the reduction in the parking setback to the lobby. Next slide. Upon our circulation, we received no objections from IRCA. We did not receive, we did receive comments from the Building Department and Infrastructure Services, and they had no objections, and no comments were received from the public. So at this point, I will return it back over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Kareem. Mr. Kendricks, are you here to speak on it, or is VJ Basad glad going to speak on it?
Yes. Okay, just a minute, please. Hello, Chair. My name is Vijay. Can you listen to me?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, Mr. Kendrick.
I'm watching the pictures.
Okay, good.
First of all, there's more than 3 parking spots on the ground level. There's 5 altogether, together with a loading dock. Something that could be pointed out. And I have VJ speak to the barricade next to the
a little bit louder, please.
Front entrance. I'm sorry, what part did you miss? I mentioned that there's 5 parking spots as you enter the site. I think there was a mention of 3, but there's actually 5, together with a further one for loading zone. And have VJ, the architect who's with us, comment on the barricade at the front entrance.
Yeah, may I speak, please?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I know the zoning bylaw needs 4.5 meters from the habitable wall up to the parking space. However, on the ground floor, there is no habitable wall, and the habitable rooms are on the second floor. So this closeness from parking to the building shouldn't affect because there are no habitable rooms on the ground floor.
I'm not sure who's on the phone.
That's Kendrick on the phone. Kendrick. He's the guy that owns it.
Mr. Kendrick, so
Yes? What would you like? You have a question?
Ed?
I have a question if they don't.
Mr. Kendrick, is there anything else you would like to add for comment-wise at this time?
No, I really don't think I can add anything that's useful, but I'm here to answer any proper questions.
Okay,
All
thank
right.
you so much.
It's been quite well laid out by you people.
Okay, thank you. I'll move over to the committee for questions. Mr. Benito.
You say there's 5 parking spots above ground. How many is there below ground? And like, if there's visitors coming in there, where are the visitors going to be parking to visit these people?
There's a total of 50 underground parking spots. I think the bylaw calls for 1.25 parking spots per residential unit. And 10 of those parking spots are considered to be visitor parking, my understanding. In any event, there's 15 parking units shown in the diagram. That wasn't shown by the presentation, but it was submitted to the town.
So the total number, do you have a total number?
Total number, including the surface parking, would be 55.
65?
55.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
This proposal, we have had pre-consultations with the applicant for some time now. And what we've done for you is that when we've done that analysis, the applicant was able to satisfy all of the zoning requirements, excepting these 3 items that I've put before you today. So they have satisfied lot coverage, they have satisfied parking, they have satisfied accessibility. And the comments about how many surface parking spots there are on this property, he does satisfy the requirements. The only one that is affected is the fact that there is an accessible parking spot that is located at this distance in the design to the lobby. Mr. Kendrick has, he is required to supply this many accessible parking spots. And as you can see on the configuration, this is the most efficient use of that area on the surface, because he also has a ramp that goes down to the underground parking. So this is the most efficient layout that they put forward. And it's impressive that everything is compact and fits within those building requirements. And as I stated before, this will also be subject to site plan control, but the only thing is that is before us today are those 3 variances, the 2 on the 6th floor and this small distance with regards to the accessible handicap spot and the lobby wall.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the committee? I'm going to go to Mr. Gray and then Mr. Boudreau.
Yeah. My first comment is with regards to the overhang required for the pool. If the building design changes, will that then expire? and it won't be allowed. So say that the pool has decided it's not going to be in the final structure and they're just going to go with the appropriate size apartment up there on that lot. Will it be allowed to have the 6-foot reduction in the side yard setback?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Oh, I can defer to Rita. Yep.
For you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. Once a variance, always a variance, so that variance will continue to apply.
Thank you.
Well, then my further question is in the comments on page 8, with regards to this, there's a note and it says this property received a minor variance approval in 1998 that reduced the rear yard setback to 15 feet. So has there been a previous building that was on that, or does that not disappear after a year if there hasn't been a building or something? The setback, it's not in perpetuity, is it, if there's been no construction to meet that requirement?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the minor variance occurred, or sorry, this has a site-specific zoning on this property, and the site-specific zoning states that the side yard was reduced down from 20 feet down to 15 feet. The minor variance that we have today only encroaches into that 15-foot setback by 1 foot 9 inches.
Yeah.
The rear yard still stands at 25 feet. And if you approve the minor variance today, it would allow that setback distance to be reduced to the less 6 feet. So 21 feet. Is that right? 21 feet?
Yeah. So the comment on the 1998 minor variance is meaningless. Is that right?
That minor variance is still, that reduction in setback is still applicable. The proposal in 1998 was for a building, but the building was never built. So that is a site-specific zoning amendment that allows that reduction in the side yard setback distance. So that is through the site-specific zoning. This, if this were to be approved, the minor variance would, like Rita said, once a variance, always a variance, it would be applicable to this property.
Oh, okay.
Rita, do you want to add anything further?
Sure. I thought in general, when we approved a minor variance, that there was a time limit with respect to it and that it wasn't a perpetual type of thing on the property. But obviously I must have been mistaken.
Chair, I can add, there is no time limit. The committee can establish a time limit by way of a condition on a variance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I believe Mr. Boudreau, you're next, and then Mr. Pocock, I believe. You still have a question, Dan?
Sorry, I do. Through you, Mr. Chair, my question is directed to Mr. Vijay, the architect on record. The 4.5 meter setback from the handicap or the accessible parking spot to the front door, will that impede in any way on egress of the building?
No, it will not. No, egress will not be affected.
Will it impact on the spatial separation for the building?
No.
Okay, thank you. My second question is, it pointed out on the drawing that it was a 4 foot 2 inch requirement on the rear yard and 1.9 inches on the side yard. Is that correct, or was Corinne's statement 6 feet correct?
No, the site is skewed. If you look at the diagram, the maximum encroachment on the 6th floor is 6 feet, but it reduces also because the lot is skewed. The maximum encroachment in the required backyard will be only 6 feet. That is the maximum, and then it reduces.
So in the drawing that was presented on the screen, it said 4.2. Is that just the front of the building on the rear yard setback?
Yeah, yes, because it is not exactly a square lot. and that's why those dimensions change at different locations. But the worst situation was 6 feet encroachment.
Okay, my last question, the 6 feet variance that you're asking for, is that including the overhang of the cantilevered section?
That's correct. That is the overhang
Thank
around the swimming pool apron.
Yeah.
The actual swimming pool is within the setback limits. It is only the apron around the swimming pool that projects out.
I understand.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. VJ. And Mr. Chair, thank you for my time.
Thank you. Mr. Pocock, you still have a question? Nope, you're done. Ms. Benton? No. Anyone else? Anyone out there wishing to speak on the application for or opposed? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion on the minor variance.
I'll make the motion. Oops, sorry.
Sorry. Before you started the motion, Lori Chadwick did chime in that she wanted to speak.
That's fine. There's no motion on the floor. Go ahead, Lori.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the committee. I just wanted to share with you that this project has been well received here. Senior management has been already looking at this particular project as an opportunity to increase the rental opportunities within the town of Essex and especially within the center of our downtown. It is greatly anticipated. This property has been vacant for quite some time. And the example just down the road here with the Weston Apartments has been quite an exciting example for us to see. And perhaps this has inspired the property owner at this particular site. Increasing our opportunities to provide for rental housing is something that council has directed us as an administration to look at our inventory, but also to encourage development and especially for those sites that have within walking distance accessibility to grocery stores, libraries, pharmacies, etc. So I just wanted to throw that out there to the committee. We are quite excited. Council is quite excited as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I think we agree with you there.
I'll still make my motion.
Okay. On the motion,
I'll still make the motion to go with the.
moved by Mr. Benito, seconded by Mr. Pocock. Questions? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Next on the agenda tonight's application B 2520, Ontario Corporation, Lena Bitterwood. I'll turn it over to Corinne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The agent for this property is Lena Bitterwood, and the property address is 330 South Talbot Road, and this is in Essex Center. The OP designation for this property is actually industrial, but the zoning states that it is manufacturing district M13, and that's for light industrial and the business park. The total subject site is 12.6 acres. And as you can see here, the purple severed area is 5.5 acres, and the green retained area is 7.1 acres. Next slide, please. Just a clear air photo shot here, just so you can see some of the features on the property. The future intent for the severed parcel is for an RV sales lot. A permanent structure is not proposed at this time, just a potential temporary office trailer. And the northwest side of the rush drain is the area that would be utilized. So Sarah's just going to point out where the rush drain is and how it zigzags across the property, Sarah. Yep, great. So you can see there that in between where the new Kubota dealership is, there's ample room there on that side of the rush drain in order to have this business set up. A little bit of information about the rush drain. As you all know, the expansion of the Highway 3 is going to be undertaken hopefully in the near future. And a part of that development or expansion, I should say, is going to be the removal of the rush drain. So the rush drain that runs through there is going to be relocated into the area that is for the Cyber Systems Greenway. And Sarah, if you could just note that with your cursor, where the trail system is. Yep. And another thing that you'll notice here is that the South Talbot Road, so in front of the Kubota dealer, South Talbot Road, you'll see that it stops at this property. And then this is part of the expansion that's also going to happen with the Highway 3 expansion, is going to connect the South Talbot roads together. Okay, next slide, please. Just some shots of the property. You can see it's vacant currently. You can see that there is services that are existing. There's fire hydrants there. There's the utilities that are put in, and the end of the South Talbot at this location. The bottom pictures just show the condition of where the rush drain comes through the property and then goes across Highway 3. So that's going to be rerouted. Next slide, please. So in accordance with the official plan, considering a consent application, you have to have regard for the following items. Does this application conform to the policies of the PPS? This application conforms to the land division policies of the provincial policy statement. So yes. Number 2, does the application satisfy the policies of the official plan? It does. The OP encourages the enhancement of the town's assessment base and also to provide additional local employment opportunities. The application also satisfies land division policies of our official plan. Number 3, does the application comply with the zoning bylaw? Yes, it does. This site has the municipal services, like I mentioned, and is comparable in size to the adjacent manufacturing lots, such as the new Kubota dealer and Crawford Packaging. The proposed RV sales will utilize the ample space that's located on the northwest side of the rush drain. And as I said, at this point, they're looking at just a temporary trailer for the office, and to develop the site, it will be for the parking of the new trailers that are going to be for sale, and another exciting potential proposal for this area of Essex Center. One other item just to note for the committee's information, this is a manufacturing lot in a business park area, and they will be subject to the site plan control process. So when we get this application in for site plan control, it will have to satisfy the requirements for a stormwater management for this property, for instance. Next slide, please. So upon circulation, we did receive some comments from the Conservation Authority. They stated that the property is regulated due to the location of the rush drain. Any future works on the site will require a permit, and the retained parcel is also adjacent to the Cyber Systems Trail that IRCA owns. So they wish to be notified anytime that development is proposed on that property. And they advise further that upon their review, they have no objections to the consent. The Ministry of Transportation also provided us with comments. Mr. Ryan Mentley writes, typically with a severance, MTO is primarily concerned with applications that can increase provincial highway access or reduce property frontage, which can result in increased access density. The amount of access along a provincial highway or within the functional area of an intersection can have a direct impact on the intended function of the highway. He further states, the severed and retained lots gain access via South Talbot Road, therefore not having direct access to Highway 3. MTO does not object to this proposed severance. However, the subject property is located within MTO's Highway 3 permit control area, and as such, MTO review and permits are required for any grading, construction, or alterations to the site commencing. Just for the committee's information, through the site plan control process, MTO will be circulated for their comments. We also circulated to internal departments. They had no objections to this consent, and we did not receive any public concerns with regards to this consent. Next slide, please. Should the committee choose to approve this application, approval should be subject to the following typical conditions noted here: submission of a reference plan, signed transfers, confirmation that all taxes are paid, drainage apportionments, and that all conditions will need to be met by this time next year. At this point, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair, for discussion and questions.
Are you here?
I am here, thank you. I'm actually here with Mr. Troop. He's the current owner of the lot as well.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, nothing further to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? One for Mr. Boudreau.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The rush drain that traverses the property reduces the building envelope considerably. And I understand you're going to relocate the rush drain to the front of the property or to the rear of the property to accommodate this?
Go ahead, Rita.
Through the chair, the town will be relocating the rush drain, circumventing around the property.
Okay. And until the rush drain is relocated, then no building can be built on this property because the building envelope is going to be greatly reduced because of the drainage setbacks.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's the intention of the proponent to just asphalt the property. They're looking at putting, like Corinne said, an RV sales lot. So they're not looking at doing anything in the first phase on the other side of the rush drain until that rush drain is located.
Thank you, Rita. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on the application? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion.
I'll make one. Let's get out of here.
Moved by Mr. Pocock. Second there, Mr. Benito. Questions? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Somebody else on some of this, right?
Huh? What's it? Nobody else moves over. I'll sit there.
Next application, B1820, Mark and Rose and Johnson. We're going to listen to the consent application, and we're going to listen to the minor variance application as well at the same time. And we'll deal with the consent application first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next application is a property that's located at 3873 3rd Concession Road. That's in Colchester South. And the official plan designation for this property is natural environment. The zoning for this property is natural environment NE11. Mr. Mark Johnson is joint owner of the subject lands with his mom, Roseanne Johnson. Mr. Johnson also owns the lands directly to the east of this property, identified as 3881 3rd Concession Road. Mr. Johnson has maintained the subject lands his whole life with his mom, but as his mom has now been moved over to assisted living, they now wish to sever a portion of the lands to protect the natural heritage features and potentially sell off the dwelling at 3873 3rd Concession for estate planning purposes. So if you're looking at the screen there, the green area is what I'm talking about. That is where the dwelling is located with the driveway and services to the house. And the purple area is what is going to, what is proposed to be added to Mr. Mark Johnson's private residence next door. The whole subject property is 11.95 acres. The green area would be 5 acres. The purple area that would be added is 6.88 acres in size. Next slide, please. Just some background for the committee's information. The location of the site is shown in blue. It's located within the Cedar Creek Wetland and Floodplain Complex. This corridor contains dense wooded areas, endangered species habitat, highly significant wetlands, as identified by the province. Province purchased this land, actually down the street in order to establish a new provincial park and it's called Cedar Creek Provincial Park. Maybe Sarah, oh, great, thanks Sarah for showing that. The other colors on this map correspond to significant valley lands, hazard floodway areas, and the green shaded area demonstrates the area that is subject to the Town of Essex Natural Heritage Overlay policies that are applicable. Town of Essex identified these lands as significant in the official plan and that they are to be protected in the long run. But as you can see from this air photo, there are existing and permitted uses that are allowed underneath this designation. Next slide, please. Just some shots from the road that you probably are aware of when you drove by to do your site visit. I just wanted to show you, in case you did not get a chance to walk the property, the next slide shows the interior of the property. And you can see here that there is some topographical features that correspond to the hazard floodplain that's through the property. And you can also see the understory and the reason why that this has been deemed significant wetland and upland forest and endangered species habitat. Next slide, please. Considerations of policy. In accordance with section 6.4 of the official plan, the committee should have regard to these items. Number one, does the application conform to the policies of the provincial policy statement? Consent to sever is considered development under the PPS policies. PPS states that development within areas identified as having natural heritage significance must show a demonstration of no negative impact in order to be consistent with the PPS policies. In these situations, typically an environmental impact assessment is conducted by a qualified ecologist to the satisfaction of the town in consultation with the Conservation Authority. However, in this circumstance, a severance is being requested for the sole purpose of protecting a natural heritage feature in perpetuity. Through consultation with IRCA and the owner, an alternative solution of placing a conservation easement over the feature is also an acceptable demonstration of no negative impact. The conservation easement is registered on title and is filed with the town. The easement would prescribe that future development is prohibited on the severed parcel, as no damage to the natural heritage feature would occur because of this. Mr. Johnson is fully in agreement with the registration of this conservation easement to satisfy this requirement. We have received confirmation from IRCA that they support this application, but only if this conservation easement is made condition of the severance. It is the position of the town planning staff that the application be only approved subject to the application of this condition. Number two, how does this satisfy the policies of the official plan? As noted in the PPS policies, the Town of Essex OP section 5.5 also states that natural heritage features be protected for the long term and that no development occur on the lands in the any designation unless a planning application is supported by an adequate demonstration of no negative impact. Again, staff are in agreement that registering a conservation easement over the subject or over the severed lands would satisfy the OP policies for natural environment and the natural heritage overlay policies of the zoning bylaw. And lastly, three, does this application comply with the zoning bylaw? Further, in order to comply with the zoning bylaw, a minor variance application is required to recognize the reduction of the subject property size and frontage provisions. I'll talk more about that when I do when I talk about the minor variance. Next slide, please. Should the committee choose to approve the application, approval should be subject to the satisfying the following conditions. Number one, registered reference plan, signed transfers, confirmation of all taxes paid, that a submission of drainage apportionments occur, and number five, registration of conservation easement on title for the severed property, approval of the associated minor variance, and that all conditions are met by this time next year. Next slide, please. Okay, quickly into the minor variance. Why is the minor variance needed? The zoning bylaw states that the minimum property and frontage width for a property in the NE11 zone is as currently existing. So therefore, any reduction in a property within the NE district, the natural environment district, would require a minor variance. When reviewing the applications for minor variance, we must ensure that the 4 tests are met. Number 1, that the general OP and zoning are maintained. Since the sole purpose of this application is to protect the natural heritage feature in perpetuity with the conservation easement, that conservation easement is recommended as a condition of the approval to show that no negative impact will result. This will satisfy the OP policies and the zoning policies for the natural heritage overlay. Number 2, the proposed variance is minor and desirable for the appropriate land use. The purpose of this severance is to consolidate that natural heritage feature with Mr. Mark Johnson's private lands adjacent to this property. This is the desired goal noted in the OP to protect and link these features in the long term. The retained land will be 5 acres in size, which will still support municipal services and a private septic system. Is it compatible with the character of the neighborhood? Number 3, lots within the natural environment district vary greatly, and there will be no visual changes to the neighborhood as a result of this lot adjustment. And lastly, number 4, the variance deals with circumstances particular to the site and development. The owner has owned and maintained this his whole life. He wishes to keep this property, but eventually sell the house for estate planning purposes in the future. The variance is necessary to accommodate the associated lot severance, frontage relief, and reduction in the subject property size. Next slide, please. We received comments from the Essex Region Conservation Authority. They have been involved in consultation with this proposal for some time, and they have you have their full comments in your planning packages. They have included their support in this application, just conditional to the registration of this conservation easement, and that is to satisfy the PPS requirements. We received no objection comments from our internal departments regarding these applications, and we had no comments come in from the public. Mr. Chair, I advise the committee that staff are in support of this application conditional for the registration of the conservation easement, and that is to satisfy the PPS and the official plan policies. I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair, at this point for questions and discussion.
Thank you. For Mr. or Mrs. Johnston, any comments?
Mark Johnston, Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, comments. So as Ms. Chason has pointed out, like I've lived here for the majority of my adult life, and my goal is to preserve this area and preserve the nature and the property in itself. I have no desire to build anything. I have no desire to sever anything to sell, except for the homestead, which is directly next to my existing home, and that's what my goals are. I have no desire to build anything or sell anything or sever anything of that nature, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So just for clarification for the committee, this still falls into a state residential, correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
This property is not in a state residential. This property is designated natural environment, and it is zoned natural environment. The estate residential is actually located across the street from this property.
So this won't change anything?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, can you repeat?
Oh, that's okay. That doesn't change anything.
Okay.
All right, we'll go to Mr. Beneteau first.
I don't have a problem with what they're trying to do here. My only problem is, like, why not square this off instead of a piece in the middle of the field? Like you got, I don't know, 2 acres on one, you know what I'm saying?
Can we go back to that part of on the map, because that's a concern of mine as well.
Yeah, see how it jets out into the middle of the field and then comes up along the side? To me, it should come right across, right up a little bit more the other way. Right there, it should come right across, well, yeah, right in there, right across in there. Is there a reason that you didn't go with that? Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can answer that.
Go ahead, answer it.
The reason for the what appears to be a bit of an irregular property line is actually through consultation with the Conservation Authority. The PPS states that development should not go through a hazard land. So this is the top of the Valley Land feature. So the Valley Land feature is at the very rear of what this new lot would be, or sorry, what the new property line would be. And also, Mr. Johnson wishes to include the Valley Land feature for its protection. So any new tenants or any new owners of the property will not destroy any of that feature. Also, in the PPS, it states that development is not permitted in a provincially significant wetland. The provincially significant wetland is located down in those lowlands. So passing a new lot line through that would be not consistent with the policies of the PPS.
Maybe I'm not that smart.
Can we go back to that slide again?
Like, to me, through you, Mr. Chairman, like you want to keep, Mr. Johnson wants to keep all this so it all stays one way. Well, you're going to sell this green part off eventually. What's going to stop anybody from doing what you're telling me they don't want to do? You know what I'm saying? It would make more sense to leave it with Mr. Johnson's, would it not? Like where the address is at 3873. To me, if you squared that off, that way it's everybody else is just squared off and you got one piece.
And to follow up that, Corey, before you answer that question, with it open like this and with the Conservation Authority owning it, at some point, they lease out these lands for hunting, for revenue. You have people coming in to hunt on both sides of that property. That just causes trespassing problems as well.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just for clarification, this would be a conservation easement. It would not be, the property would not be owned by the Conservation Authority. This would be owned by Mr. Mark Johnson. It would be part of his property to the east. And for Mr. Beneto's question, it's a good question. I believe, and I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I believe that the Conservation Authority would not have an issue with that property being squared off. They only had an issue with the lot line extending down into the floodplain.
Go through you. So you're telling me we could have them square that off then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you do this committee.
Yeah, that makes
Through you,
more
Mr.
sense.
Chair, I would let Mark Johnson, Mr. Mark Johnson, respond to that. The town of Essex would not have, our position would not be for or against. It doesn't change things. It would square off the rear of the property, yes.
Mr. Johnson, you go ahead and respond to it, but the committee can still do that.
Are you asking me, Mr. Chair?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, just say yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess because, you know, and Corinne has, Mr. Chair, Corinne has been very helpful with this. And if anything, I know it kind of goes against the policy of, but if you squared off the purple and left the green, might be bad, would be more advantageous from because the thing that you can't see in that green is that where that little purple point goes, you see where where it follows the top of the valley, it goes really close to the house. It's about 20 feet from the house. So that little perp right there, you can't, that purple point is like, it's 20 or 21 feet from the back side of the house. So if anything, what I would like to do, if it was possible with, a policy adjustment, is to cut that purple point off.
And
Do you know
put
what I
it
mean?
And add it to the green?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and give it to and let the future homeowner have that, because the last thing you want me coming up behind their house. Not that I would do that, but it's really, I mean, the purpose of that was just to satisfy the policy, and I respect it, of the Essex Region Conservation. And if Corinne could speak to that, I'm not quite sure.
Well,
if it's possible.
If the committee, it's the committee that would put a condition on that, and if they wish to square it off, and that makes more sense than the way it's set up right now.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if we change the layout of this proposal, I'll also pose this question to Rita. From what I understand, that would be a change to the application. And is it a significant change? I believe it would be something that we would have to recirculate. Rita, would you be able to expand on that?
Well, through the chair, that's really up to the committee of adjustment. If they feel that the nature of the proposal is changing, then it probably warrants a recirculation. But if they feel the adjustment is minor enough that it doesn't, then they can make a decision tonight. However, taking into account that this application as is proposed tonight was also circulated to the Essex Region Conservation Authority. So they may comment on it based on what was proposed.
Thank you. Yep, everyone that had to be circulated has been circulated. They had the opportunity to be here tonight. Is there any other questions from committee members? Go ahead, Mr. Boudreau.
For you, Mr. Chairman, I just want to clarify your first question you asked about estate residential. Is this not R12, Pleasant Valley Estate Residential zoning?
Across the road.
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, it is not. It is natural environment designation. And again, the zoning for this property is natural environment 1.1.
For you, Mr. Chair, I can confirm that as well. The zoning is natural environment. It is located in the Pleasant Valley neighborhood, but in terms of the general land use and the building regulations, lot regulations, we have to conform with the natural environment district.
Go ahead, supplementary.
Follow-up question. So in the zoning R12, minimum lot size is 10 acres or 4 hectares, and we're reducing this down to 5 acres, half of that. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the NE designation and the NE zoning does not have a minimum lot size prescribed. It states that the lots are as existing. There is no prescriptive minimum lot size. And again, this is not estate residential.
Thank you for clearing that up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Mr. Craig.
Yeah, actually, Mr. Chair, this refers back to your comment. When we've done some severances or whatever's happened on agricultural lands, it's not unusual that a rear boundary follows a natural feature, whether it's a creek or a ridge or whatever it might happen to be. And is that not kind of what the case is here? That's the top of the ridge of the lowland that is the Cedar Creek floodplain area. So to go along the top of the boundary as is proposed in this application, it follows a unique geographical feature. So I understand the concept of squaring off the back lines and that, but this is kind of a unusual situation. And I think we've seen similar type of geographical ones on agricultural lots for sure. That's just my comment on that. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
No, thank you. Yeah, that's true.
But it's below it.
That could be said about a lot of the areas in Pleasant Valley with the drains and creeks running through there. They'd have an argument there as well. If they really wanted to use this for an example, I would say. Anyone else?
It's below it. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna make the motion that we go with the.
Hang on.
Oh, I'm sorry, there was nobody else saying anything.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on the applications? Or opposed from the public? Seeing none, I'll take your motion now, Mr. Bennett.
I'll make the motion that we go with the proposal here, but we square that off for that, looking at the map, the left-hand side, my left, goes with that 3873. You know what I'm talking about, Sarah?
You want to bring it up for clarification?
I do, yeah. So you want.
I want it squared from there right
there.
across and
From
that
here
up in
on.
there. Yeah.
Yes, so right here. Do you want, okay,
Does everyone see that?
so there is an embankment that sits up here, so do you want it
Straight,
No,
square.
straight
to
across.
go?
No, straight
Okay,
across
so
from
from
that.
right down here,
Right
this
across.
point,
Yeah.
right across.
That's right.
Okay.
It doesn't go up at all. It goes straight
Does
across.
not go up at all, so it would, this would intake some of that embankment,
Okay.
right?
That's right.
Okay.
On that motion, is there a seconder? I'll second. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Boudreau. Seconded by Mr. Boudreau. Questions? Mr. Pocock first and then Mr. Gray.
Are we including the easement for Urca in this motion?
Whatever's in there.
Phil, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
The easement that Urca's requested, are we including that in the motion?
Yes, it will be.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Gray.
Mr. Benito, would you even take a look at moving that point of land back up to that point and squaring it off, like going north and squaring it off from that point, going directly east, rather than coming down to that other point and going to the west? So if you're going to square the lot off, I'm just saying let's include the geographical feature in, but let's make the point up at the top of the point go directly east. Yes, that's it. Thank you, Sarah.
That became a problem with Mr. Johnson, with it only being 21 feet away from the other residential home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Boudreau?
Just to add to Mr. Beneto's proposal on the lot, severing off the lot square, can we make the rear property line parallel to the road property line so it's an actual square lot or a rectangle?
So
rather than being on a skew, it'd be a parallelogram basically.
Yeah, I don't see any problems with it. Rita, any? Yes? The answer is yes to that question. So Mr. Johnson, if you're seeing a problem with this, normally
I'm good.
There's a motion.
Mr. Chair. I'm okay with that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thanks. There's a motion on the floor. I don't generally go out to anyone when there's a motion on the floor, but we want to make sure that you understand what we're doing. Okay, any other questions? All in favor? Opposed? No one. Now I need a motion for the minor variance application for A 1820. Moved by Mr. Boudreau, seconded by Mr. Pocock. All in favor?
You see why I make them?
Carried. Mr. Johnson, that's it.
Yes, sir. Thank you kindly.
All right, thanks. Next application B 2420, Henry and Kathy Newmiller. Turn it over to Connie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next application deals with the property located at 650 County Road 13. That's Colchester South. The OP designation for this property is agricultural. Zoning is agricultural 1.1. That's for general agriculture and farm production support activities. The total subject site is 5 acres. The purple area, which is the potential severed parcel, is 0.47 acres. The green retained area would be the result of that would be 4.53 acres. Next slide, please. So just some scaled in versions, so you can have a clear view of what's happening on the property here. We have two houses on one farm lot. Farm lot's 5 acres. You have an orchard behind there, and then you have the agricultural production area for the orchard in those barns that are located there at the bottom of the screen. They wish to pass the Mr. and Mrs. Newmiller wish to sever this this parcel, this ranch style home that's on this parcel, because they wish to pass the farming operation on to their son. There's currently these 2 dwellings that exist. They're going to sever off that northerly home as a separate lot. Mr. and Mrs. Newmiller only own this one property. They do not own any other farming operation or farmland holdings. They have submitted this application for severance to split off the second residence for future potential estate planning. The sketch provided by the applicants shows the severance would not remove agricultural land from the farming operation, and the arrow points to the grassed area around the dwelling, and that gives enough area for the septic system, and it has always been a mowed area. Both these homes are in habitable condition. They have septic systems and municipal water services. Next slide, please. So in the middle picture there at the top, you can see the ranch style home. That's where Mr. and Mrs. Newmiller currently live. You can see the orchard that surrounds the property, and the gray house at the bottom is the house that their son is going to move into and take over the farming operation. Next slide, please. Consideration of policy. You need to satisfy these 3 items. The provincial policy, PPS discourages lot creation in prime agricultural areas. Lot creation may only be permitted for the following: agricultural uses, agricultural related uses, lot adjustments, for infrastructure, or for a residence surplus to a farming operation as a result of farm consolidation. So the PPS defines a residence surplus to a farming operation as an existing habitable farm residence that is rendered surplus as a result of farm consolidation, which is the acquisition of additional farm parcels to be operated as one farming operation. Subject property is the only land holding that they own. Because of this, the application does not meet the PPS criteria for qualifying as a surplus dwelling lot. This proposal is therefore not consistent with the agricultural land division policies of the PPS. Number 2, the official plan. How does it correspond with the official plan policies? Section 6.5 of the official plan only permits one lot creating consent in areas designated agricultural for surplus dwellings, and specifically only where a lot has been acquired for consolidation with another farm. The surplus dwelling being on an acquired lot. sorry, I read that wrong. Specifically only where a lot has been acquired for consolidation with another farm and that surplus dwelling being that acquired lot. Sorry about that. As the owners are not purchasing this lot to consolidate their farm holdings, the second residence cannot qualify as a typical surplus dwelling. It is simply a second dwelling located on a farm lot. The severance would be new lot creation, therefore, comparable in the past to the term that we used to use, which was a retirement lot. And as you know, those are long now prohibited under the PPS and the official plan policies. Therefore, this application does not satisfy the agricultural land division policies of our official plan. Next slide, please. However, should the committee choose to approve these applications, they would be subject to the typical conditions for consent, and they're listed there. Next slide, please. As a result of the proposed severance, a minor variance would also be required to recognize the reduction of the farm parcel and the severed lot frontage. The minimum lot size in an agricultural district is 40 hectares, or as existing. The lot is 5 acres. The severed lot would reduce it by another 0.47 acres, and the proposed severed lot would also be reduced in width. When reviewing applications for a minor variance, we need to meet the 4 tests. The minor variance is required as a result of the proposed severance application. Severance would permit 2 undersized agricultural properties. The proposed severance does not meet the criteria, again, for the agricultural severance under the PPS or the official plan. 2 residences with separate addresses exist on this property. The applicant wishes these properties to be separated. This would permit the owners to reside next to the farming operation, but pass on the family business to their son, and later permit the sale of the second dwelling for, again, potential estate planning purposes. Number 3, the residences are both they both have addresses 650 and 658 County Road 13. They contain separate driveways. No changes are proposed to this configuration. Therefore, no impacts will be to traffic or parking patterns. And number 4, the owners have identified that they wish to continue living next to the farming operation, but want to pass on these operations to their children. The existing 5-acre agricultural lot, which is it's considerably smaller than the typical 50 to 100-acre lots that we normally see in this region. But this contains an orchard or a specialty crop that is considered viable for this type of operation. Next slide, please. We circulated this application to internal town of Essex departments, and we received no objections. Circulation to external public agencies was also completed, and we did receive comments from the engineering department of the County of Essex, who noted that any future development on these lands would need to comply with the county road setback requirements. No development is being proposed at this time, so this would not be a factor. They stated that they had no objections to the consent with regards to the engineering department. ERC also responded to this circulation stating that they had no objections. And we did not receive any written correspondence of objection from the public. In summary, for the committee's information, it is staff's recommendation in this case that these applications, since they do not meet the agricultural severance policies of the PPS or the Town of Essex official plan, our recommendation on this is that this application be denied. I should add that if the committee were to give consideration to these applications, there is a risk of other applicants coming forward with similar requests that do not meet the PPS or the OP policies. There could also be a risk of appeal of this application from others that have been denied similar applications. Town planning staff would not be in a position to support an approval of this application if it were to be appealed at the local planning appeals tribunal. And at this point, I will send it back over to you, Mr. Chair, for discussion and questions.
No one on the committee should be intimidated by what staff is recommending. It is the committee's decision to decide on the application and not the staff. Their comments are for themselves. They're not to interfere with the decisions that we make. Anyone wishing to speak? Well, let's go to the new millers first. Are they there?
Yes.
Okay, Henry, go ahead.
I would like to read from a prepared statement, if that would be all right. Can you hear me?
No. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to read from a prepared statement, if that's all right.
Go ahead.
Okay. My name's Henry Newmiller, and along with my wife, Kathy, would like to thank the chairman and members of the Committee of Adjustment, as well as the Town of Essex Planning Department, for the opportunity to speak on behalf of our application for a minor variance and consent for a severance for the property of 650 County Road 13. In April of 1957, when I was almost 12 years old, I, along with my three sisters and parents, Henry and Elizabeth Newmiller, emigrated from Austria to Harrow and worked and lived at Wrightland Farms on Ridge Road. After 6 years of working at Wright's, my parents were able to purchase the farm at 650 County Road 13 in 1963. Over the years, my parents sold the fruits and vegetables that they had harvested at the popular roadside stand. In 1976, Kathy and I purchased the farm from my parents, and we built the ranch house on the northwest corner of the lot so that my parents could remain living in the original farmhouse and be close to their young grandchildren. Kathy and I continued to live in the ranch home, which is the subject of these applications. In 1986, we began farming apples, and like vineyards, we are specialty farming. Despite its small size and acreage, the density of the tree yields high volumes of fruit, and an 1,800 tree orchard is essentially a full-time job during harvest season and countless hours of work during the spring and summer months. Our orchard has grown into a very productive farm that continues serving generations of local Windsor and Essex customers through our roadside stand, as well as supplying various supermarkets in the region. Our son James, along with his wife Colleen and our two grandchildren, are now wanting to take on the orchard and continue running the family business. It is our hope and intention that we may remain in the ranch house and they would move into the original farmhouse, and we would have the opportunity to have our grandchildren grow up next to us as well. In recent years, we have seen the town of Essex be proactive in promoting initiatives such as Explore the Shore and Buy Local, and with our location, we have certainly felt the benefit of this push by seeing an increase in customers. When discussing growth of the orchard and innovative ideas in the future, we have visions that include, among other things, a cidery, which can tap into growing markets along the wine route and increase economic growth of the area. We understand the policies that are in place are meant to preserve agricultural lands and not to increase residential properties and in the rural setting. Our situation is unique, as with two residential dwellings on the property, we feel our ranch house is surplus to the current and subsequent needs of the farming operation. We believe it is not the same as creating a building lot that takes away from prime agricultural land, and that the policy is intending to prohibit. While the policy and the plan allows for surplus dwellings severance, which this would likely qualify for if another farmer were consolidating their farming operations, the end result is the same as what we are trying to accomplish here today. The ranch house was built with all the legal permits of the day and aesthetically looks as if they were separate properties. It bears repeating that with the proposed severance, we do not impede on any farmland of the orchard. We are encouraged by our son and his family's desire to continue and expand on what has been in our family for almost 60 years, and would love to remain close to be part of what we have worked so hard to establish as a productive, trusted, and locally owned family business. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Mr. Boudreau.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just a clarification from Corinne. When you said there was other severances that weren't similar to this and turned down, were they for second dwellings or they were just for lot creation?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Boudreau, we do have other situations in the township and in the town that there is two houses on one lot. This is similar to those. Those situations, again, would receive the same type of comments as I've presented today. This is, it would be drawing new lines around that property. Is this like a typical surplus dwelling that we normally see? It's similar, but they do not meet the criteria because they do not own other land holdings. And it was the creation of this lot is not as a result of land consolidation. And the PPS states that. So our OP policies comply with the provincial policy statement. So that is the difference in this. If another farmer were to purchase the entirety of this land and that other farmer owned other farming operations or land holdings, yes, that farmer then could sever off this property as a surplus. But because the new millers do not own that other property or they're potentially purchasing this property as they cannot deem this as a surplus because of that stipulation.
Okay, thank you. Rita, you wish to comment?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to comment on Corinne's comments regarding similar applications. In the agricultural district, the committee sees applications for surplus dwellings, meaning these are dwellings that have been rendered surplus because of farm lot consolidation. So this is not a true surplus dwelling application. This is not similar in nature to any other application, at least my time on the committee that has been presented. It's a message we relay to applicants who propose the same, that farm consolidation policy, that's provincial policy. And the PPS is clear on residential lot creation in agricultural areas. It is to be prohibited unless it meets the criteria for a surplus dwelling lot.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Gray?
Yeah. So I understand the PPS and what exactly the restrictions are with regards to it. So a potential scenario here would be that another farmer, not necessarily into the same type of business that Mr. Newmiller is, and would purchase the property, spin off the lot as described, and then sell the property back to Mr. Newmiller's son, and would have created what they're trying to do here. So it seems to me under that point, we're putting severe, maybe not severe, but substantial financial stress on the Newmillers in this whole thing, where there would be a fair bit of a property sales tax that would be attributed a couple of times, possibly within a month or whatever it would be. So as part of their estate planning, I think that what we're going to be doing here is creating a hardship for the Newmillers, unfortunately. It's an unfortunate situation where we have these two dwellings on an agricultural property. There's probably several of them that exist in Colchester South and Colchester North from way before amalgamation type of situation. This to me is an opportunity to correct one of those existing ones, and that maybe sometime in the future, hopefully this would be the type of thing that we would want to be doing. We would want to clear these lots up that exist like this. And I think that maybe that should be a consideration of where we might want to go here today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks. Go ahead, Rita.
For you, Mr. Chair, when the committee makes a decision on a severance application, they have to ensure, and this is enshrined in the Planning Act, that it complies with provincial policy. All things aside, like taxes, estate planning, don't apply here if the provincial policy statement prohibits this type of severance.
A question to Rita. Does provincial policy not state that you cannot have two houses on the same farm?
For you, Mr. Chair, it actually doesn't state that two dwellings are prohibited. With respects to our own official plan, we do prohibit the number of dwellings on agricultural parcels to only one. That might change in the future because of changes to the PPS with respects to second dwelling units. As Mr. Gray notes, we do have several agricultural properties in the town with more than one, sometimes 2, 3, 4 dwellings. And that is a result because we took 4 zoning bylaws, 4 official plans, and we amalgamated them back in 1999, and they have just become legally non-conforming buildings. So with respect to the PPS today, it does speak to residential lot creation in terms of a surplus dwelling, but it doesn't put a number in terms of how many surplus dwelling lots you can create, so long as you meet that policy of it being a surplus dwelling lot because of farm lot consolidation. Our official plan goes a step above that, in that we allow you to apply for a surplus dwelling lot, but we only allow you to create one lot. We don't allow you to sever off both of those houses on separate parcels. Again, that might change in the future, but that's not something that's prohibited in the provincial policy statement. So therefore, it is something we can put in our official plan.
When amalgamation took place and everything came together, the town of Essex didn't change anything when it comes to that part. Those were existing. All these properties we're going to talk about are existing. And you hit the nail on the head in a question that I'm going to bring forward. That severance that they're asking for is legal non-conforming to what we have in front of us today because it was existing.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just a point of clarification, the 2 dwellings on the property are legally non-conforming.
That's right.
Not the severance
So
itself.
in order to make them conform, they have to be separated. Then they fall into their own categories of residential homes.
So for you, Mr. Chair, the application before us is to separate one of the dwellings on their own lot. So again, with respects to the severance, we have to apply the policies of provincial policy statement. The dwellings are existing. We recognize them. They can comply.
But provincial policy still states you cannot have 2 houses on the same farm.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it actually doesn't state the number of dwellings. Okay, the PPS with respects to dwellings is really mute in the agricultural area. You'll even run into situations in other municipalities where they don't even allow dwellings on agricultural properties because the main use is really agricultural. But we here at the town of Essex do permit dwellings. However, in terms of the PPS, it does not state how many dwellings you can have on a agricultural property.
So what you're trying to tell the committee is that all these existing properties have to stay as they are unless a farmer purchases them and comes with an application as a surplus dwelling.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if they wanted to separate the existing buildings on their own lot, yes, they have to meet the policy respecting a surplus dwelling lot.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Benito.
The only thing, we're not catching the word, they're non-conforming, am I right? That's why they're sitting the way they are, through you, Mr. Chairman,
Through you,
to
Mr.
Rita.
Chair, that's correct. They're two non-conforming houses.
So that's why they're still sitting the way they are.
That's correct.
And there's nothing you can do about it right now with the way the policy sits.
In terms of separating one on their own lot, unless it's a surplus dwelling and it meets that policy, no.
Go ahead, Mr. Boudreau.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. And my question is addressed to Rita. Does the provincial policy address these small specialized farms? Like the apple, the orchard is something that's specialized and unique to our area, and there's not many left. So where can Mr. Newmiller go and buy another apple orchard to become a mega farmer? That's the problem I'm having here.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, the policy is it's provincial. It's set up that way because the province wants to prohibit residential lot creation in prime agricultural areas despite the size of the farm. So farm consolidation is really the key here. If Mr. Newmiller was able to satisfy that, now he doesn't have to own another agricultural property. So I'm going to go back to Mr. Gray's comments. Here at the town of Essex, we don't put an extra burden on proponents, on applicants for surplus dwelling applications. We've received many applications for surplus dwelling lots where in which the property owner enters into an agreement of purchase and sale with somebody, it doesn't have to be a farmer, just somebody who owns, you know, other agricultural parcels. They enter into that agreement of purchase and sale, they make that application, and it's noted as a condition in that agreement that the sale will go through once the severance is approved. So they don't actually have to sell the farm off to somebody first and then buy it back.
I disagree to the point where if a young farmer comes forward and he wants to start farming, tell me how he starts.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would assume it's by raising capital and by applying for a surplus dwelling lot. And we've run into situations where we've had people at our counter who are new farmers who want to enter the market, and they found the perfect farm. This is the only farm that they own. And there's a house and they want to sever off the house because that's a way for them to raise capital for their farming operation. However, unfortunately, because they don't own that other agricultural parcel, there's no farm consolidation happening, they don't qualify as a surplus dwelling lot.
That just reduces the cost of buying that farm. That's the name of the game. That's why the big farmers got to where they are today. They buy the farm with the house, they sever off the house, they sell the house, reduce the cost of that land by thousands of dollars. And that's why it's been very difficult for any young farmers to be able to get into the business.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I hear you and I understand that. And like I said, this is provincial policy. It's not town of Essex policy. We just have to comply with provincial policy.
Okay, so much for
But I do
argument.
hear you.
Is there any other questions?
Right.
Mr. Gray.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, to Rita. So Rita, if somebody bought this farm, could they actually sever off both of those as surplus dwellings, and we would actually be creating two lots at that point in time, plus the farm lot?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if a person purchases property and they owned one other agricultural parcel,
yes,
they would qualify under today's policies as a surplus dwelling lot to sever one of those houses. We are reviewing our official plan policies to allow for the creation of two surplus dwelling lots because it doesn't conflict with the PPS. Currently, our OP says you can only create one surplus dwelling lot, and we're currently reviewing that in hopes that we can open the door for multiple surplus dwelling lot on lots with two dwellings, for example.
Like the Salters property.
Yeah. But again, the underlying qualifier is that this person owns other agricultural parcels. That is the underlying qualifier under the provincial policy statement. It is not a new policy that the town of Essex developed. It is provincial policy that we must comply with.
Okay. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, so just as a supplement there, Rita, so are you telling me that the town of Essex bylaws do not agree with the PPS, and the PPS would suggest you could have two severances, but the town of Essex says you could only have one?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, that's a great question. In terms of the minimum standards under the PPS, the official plan of the town of Essex complies with the minimum standards. But with respects to that condition, yeah, we might be a little bit more strict. That's why we're going to review it next year in our 5-year review.
Maybe it's time to put it through the test and see where it goes. Any other questions? Phil, anything? Mr. Bennett, do anything?
Nope.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on the application? Then I'll look for a motion. Move. Mr. Pocock,
Yeah, I move the motion as the application stands.
I'm sorry, I don't think anybody heard you.
I move the move on the motion of the how the application stands of covering the access dwelling, basically.
You're making a motion to pass the application?
Correct.
Seconder? Mr. Boudreau? Questions? All in favor? I'll support it too. Opposed? Mr. Beneteau?
Recorded.
Carried. You want to record a vote?
Yep.
Okay. Yep, recorded.
Okay, Sarah?
Okay, I will ask. Brian Gray, member, how do you vote? For or opposed?
I support the recommendation.
Okay. The recommendation is to sever the parcel and to move the application as is. Phil Pocock, how do you vote? Opposed or for?
For.
Dan Boudreau, how do you vote?
For.
For? Ray Beneteau, how do you vote?
Opposed.
And Percy Dufour, how do you vote?
I support it.
So that is 4-1 to move the application forward with the severance
So
as
the motion
presented.
is carried.
Yeah.
On the minor variance application.
Let's open the back door.
A2820, I need a motion to move the minor application, moved by Mr. Boudreau, seconded by, you want to record a vote for this also? Moved by Mr. Boudreau, seconded by Mr. Pocock. Any questions? All in favor? It's carried.
Opposed? Okay, thank you.
Get to that.
Mhm.
Thank you. I'll be in tomorrow. I'll be in tomorrow.
Did Bill make the motion?
Yeah.
On the minor application?
Yep. Dan Boudreau made the motion on the minor variance. Phil Pocock.
Dan made the motion, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. Moving to application B 2620. Corinne, are you still there?
Yeah. Yes, I'm still here, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Last application of a very long night. Thanks everybody for your patience in tonight for sure. The last application is for a surplus dwelling. The application number is B2220. The owner of the property currently is Mr. Thomas G. And he has a Mr. Gord Danaher has a purchase agreement on the property. The agent is joining us today. His name is Mr. Edwin Hooker. And the property in question is 2889 County Road 12. And the OP designation, agricultural zoning, is agricultural A11. You can see on the diagram here, or the air photo, the surplus dwelling is fronting on County Road 12 in the purple area. And the green area is the proposed retain lot. Original property, 50.3 acres. Severed lot, 0.7 acres in size. And the retain will end up being 49.6 acres. The farm lot is accessed by an established entrance off of Batten Road, and it is located right behind the old schoolhouse, I believe it is. And Mr. G's house is habitable, it's in good condition, and it is hooked up to municipal water and has a private septic system. Next slide, please. Just some views of Mr. G's house and the access to the farm lot behind. You can see there's a couple houses that are flanking the Mr. G's house as well. So there's kind of a cluster of houses and then the farm lot behind. Next slide, please. In accordance with section 6.4 of the official plan in considering an application for consent, Committee of Adjustment should have regard to the following. Does it comply with the provincial policy statement? PPS defines a residence surplus to a farming operation as an existing habitable farm residence that is rendered surplus as a result of farm consolidation. Farm consolidation, as defined, is the acquisition of an additional farm parcel to be operated as one farming operation. Mr. Danaher has identified his ownership of other farm holdings, and he will acquire this property as farm consolidation. Therefore, this application is consistent with the severance policies of the PPS because that Mr. G's house would be considered surplus to Mr. Danaher's farming operation. Number 2, does it comply with the official plan policies? Consents in areas designated agricultural, one lot, creating consent will be permitted for a surplus dwelling on the conditions that no new dwelling will be permitted on the retained farmland. Restricted development layer will be applied to the property upon approval of the town's approval of this application to the town's GIS system. Size of the surplus dwelling is not greater than 1 hectare. The surplus lot has an inspected septic system, potable water supply, and stormwater management outlet that fronts onto a public road. A condition of this consent will be that the owner confirms with the building department that the septic system satisfies Part 8 of the building code. And lastly, the surplus dwelling is in habitable condition, and we have received no objections through circulation from the building department on this. The application satisfies all these items. Number 3, the zoning bylaw. Minor variance is necessary to recognize the resulting severed and retained parcels, as well as recognizing the less than 200-foot frontage provision for agricultural lands. Next slide, please. Upon circulation of the application, we received no objections from internal departments. We received comments from the IRCA, and they stated that they had no comment or no objections. After giving public notice, we did not receive any written correspondence objecting to this application. Next slide, please. Should the committee choose to approve this application, approval should be subject to satisfying the above noted conditions of consent. Next slide, please. The minor variance application that goes along with this application for consent is for 2 items. Reduction of the existing farm lot area. The zoning bylaw states that a minimum lot area for lots within an agricultural district is 40 hectares or 100 acres or as existing. Existing is 50, severed is 0.7, and the retained farm lot is 49.6 acres. The second minor variance that we need to review tonight is for the reduction in the lot width for the surplus, and it is currently 33 meters or 108 feet, but the zoning bylaw prescribes that minimum lot area for a agricultural district is 200. Next slide, please. So how does it meet the 4 tests? The OP permits that the creation of surplus dwelling lots when in accordance with the provisions of the PPS. As stated, this application satisfies the policies and criteria for creation of surplus under the PPS. Proposed surplus is habitable, dwelling lot size is of a size sufficient to accommodate septic systems, or the septic system, and we have received copy of the purchase agreement from Mr. Danaher, so he meets those criteria items. Number 2, the minor variance is desirable and appropriate for the land use. Lots in an A1.1 zoning district, they do vary greatly in area, but no new development is proposed on the severed or the retained parcel in this case. Number 3, compatible with the character of the neighborhood, the dwelling and accompanying infrastructure already existing, access is already existing, and there will be a prohibition against the construction of any new dwelling on the retained agricultural land. And lastly, what's particular about this site that the variance is needed? The variance is necessary in order to accommodate the surplus dwelling application. Next slide, please. Just through our circulation, we did not receive any objections to this application from internal departments, external agencies, or the public. So at this point, I will return it back over to you, Mr. Chair, for discussion.
Booker, do you wish to add anything?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Jason, for doing a very capable job in describing the application. I have had a chance to review the recommended conditions that are in the planning report at page 27, and I think that they're acceptable. Here to answer any other questions you might have, but don't have anything further to add at this time.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the committee? Anybody from the outside? Looking for a motion?
I'll make the motion to go with the application.
Moved by Mr. Beneteau, seconded by Mr. Pocock. That's to pass the application.
Yes.
All in favor? It's carried. On the minor variance, application A3020, I'm looking for a motion for the minor variance. Moved by?
I'll make it again.
Moved by Mr. Gray, seconded by Mr. Boudreau. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Moving to unfinished business.
For you, Mr. Chair, very quickly, so we've kept you here long enough. Just wanted to give everybody an update on the appeal of 1241 South Mullen Road. You'll recall it was a severance for a farm split. Went to the local planning appeal tribunal, and the local planning appeal tribunal turned over an order in favor of the severance, granting the severance, noting that it complied with the official plan policies respecting consents in agricultural areas, and it also complied with the provincial policies respecting consents in agricultural areas.
So you're telling me you can take a 20 or a 40 acre farm and split it 30-10?
For you, Mr. Chair, that's not what I'm telling you. With respect to this application, again, everything that you decide is on a site-specific basis. What the LPAT did note was that the former use of the property was not agricultural. It was a spa, it was a retreat, and this severance was really not going to impact on the agricultural productivity of this farm because it never was used for agricultural purposes. So that formed a huge part of her order when evaluating this decision.
Through you again.
Go ahead.
Through you again. I think the one reason they wanted to make that 10 acres to use the maple trees for their brewery. There's not enough maple trees in that bush to make a leaf collection.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, the retained portion, they had future plans to use it as a brewery. Now, a brewery in our book, in our zoning bylaw, is to be in combination with an agricultural operation. So, I mean, they could be growing hops on that parcel one day. They don't necessarily have to use they don't have to necessarily use the maple trees. They can clear those trees. We don't recommend that, obviously, because it's an area of natural heritage.
It is agricultural.
Yes. So, in terms of that use, the brewery, it's allowed in the agricultural area. And like I said, she evaluated it, the LPAT judge, on a site-specific basis, and she found that because of the previous use of the property, in this case being a spa, being a retreat, very unusual types of uses in agricultural areas, that severing it off and the uses that they wanted to apply on both those parcels were a better use of the property than the former use. So she didn't see any impact to the agricultural productivity of this parcel. So in answering your question, Mr. Boudreau, or Mr. Beneteau, you evaluated on a site-specific basis. So no, this does not set a precedent. This does not mean everybody with the 50-acre farm can come and sever their parcel in half. There are policies in our official plan. There are policies in the PPS, although minimum policies. This is where OP has to be really strong in capturing what we need to be satisfied about when evaluating an application for a farm split.
Okay, thank you. It's unfinished. Any correspondence? No. New business? Nothing? Notice of motion?
For adjournment?
No notice of motions? Adjournment? Moved by Mr. Benetton. Seconded by Mr. Polcock. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you, everyone. It's been a long evening,
Thank you.
long afternoon.
Thanks.